Mayo experience.
That Mayo experience. That Mayo experience. That Mayo experience. Experience.
Welcome to another edition of the Dog or Pass podcast. UFC 223, Khabib versus Max Holloway. Was supposed to be Tony Ferguson. Tony gets hurt in a complete freak accident. In steps probably the best late replacement you could ever ask for, the 145-pound champion, a total warrior, add all the expletives and everything that you can say about this guy. He's awesome. Before stepping in against Khabib Nurmagomedov, my guy, little warning here. Anybody who's new to the show, I'm very biased about Khabib. I'll never say that he has a chance to lose or anything like that. So I don't want you going in the comment section going, oh man, this guy's wearing a Khabib shirt telling me to bet on Khabib. He's so biased. Yes, I am biased. But maybe Cody Saftic, my co-host here, is not so biased about Max Holloway's chances here. Props to Max stepping in against probably the most dominant guy at 155 pounds, I would argue, in the world and in any weight class. But props to Max for stepping in 6 days' notice against a guy that people don't want to fight him. Iaquinta later down on the card, he actually went on record and said, "I don't want to fight that guy. They would have to pay me a boatload to fight Khabib." But here we have it. Any initial thoughts on the card, Cody?
Yeah, well, the fact that they were able to find a replacement in general is just crazy.
Great replacement.
Yeah, great replacement, but I don't know that he was their #1 choice because you hear all these other guys coming out, like Brian Ortega coming out and Eddie Alvarez coming out, and obviously it makes sense that this is a pay-per-view, guys. We're trying to sell pay-per-view buys. Otherwise, it's a good-looking card, but how much is it realistically going to sell? You have 2 title fights. People are really looking forward to Ferguson versus Khabib. So you have a late-notice replacement. If you go Brian Ortega, I think a fun fight. However, it's not going to sell anything.
No.
And Eddie Alvarez, obviously, he's saying he weighs like 190 pounds right now. He's a big guy, probably more than that. He's not going to cut down to 155 on short notice and make it. But anybody in their right mind, like you take the best version of Max Holloway and you put him in the ring against Khabib, he's going to be a 4-1 underdog. He's going to be a 5-1 underdog. You take Max Holloway's 6 days notice against Khabib, and it just seems insurmountable for not just him, but for anybody.
Coming off of, he pulled out of his title fight just a month ago with his own issues as well.
Yeah, he's got an ankle injury, and that was especially notable because he's got to make the weight on 6 days' notice. So you hear interviews from his nutritionist, George Lockhart, who's saying, listen, this is a big weight cut that he's got to do, but you factor that in on top of a bum ankle, he can't really do the same road work he's been doing. He's probably not in the gym every single day getting ready because he's probably at home letting it heal. So yes, he's a great athlete, and he's going to be in good shape, and he probably is going to make the weight because he's one of those guys that you get this opportunity, you're the featherweight champ, to jump up to 55, you got to make the weight. He's going to do everything in his possible to make the weight. But this is not one of those situations where Max Holloway is going to miss weight by 0.3 pounds because it's championship weight. He's going to make it. It's going to take something out of him. Now, if you look at interviews right now with Khabib, he looks drawn out too, man. Like, he's in for a bad weight cut. And so if we're talking about ways that Max Holloway could potentially win this fight, he's got to obviously keep the fight standing. He's obviously got to play it at range. And he's just got to work Khabib. Like, we see Khabib go out there, and his cardio looks off the charts. But we haven't seen him in 4th round, 5th round, where he's getting tagged up.
But the one thing about it, and I've heard this argument, oh, well, Khabib hasn't went to 4th or 5th. It's just like what you see of him at the end of round 3 is just like...
Couldn't agree more.
He looks like he could continue to do that at least for another 2 rounds. Like, he's not really gassing all that much. As long as he's fighting his fight.
Yeah,
if he's fighting his fight, he's getting top control. He's grabbing limbs and punching you, slamming you. He can do that type of thing all day. Max Holloway, I will give him this. It's like you watch tape on him, and it's just like his fundamentals for his takedown defense are very, very good. Like he's always looking for the whizzer. He's really good at limp legging. He gets backed up to the cage all the time, and that's an issue against Khabib because Khabib doesn't really go open space takedowns all that often. He'll usually put you up against the cage, and then it's just like jigsaw, pulling you, pushing, pulling, and finding the way. He'll just constantly just move up and down and all around until he finds the one spot where you're vulnerable and he gets you to the ground. When he gets you to the ground, it's really, really hard to get up. So if Max can, make it really difficult on Khabib, make him fight for every little inch, then sure, I would say, Max, there's not many guys who have better cardio than Max, right? Like, he gets it. What he usually does is he chips away at you, and rounds 3, rounds 4, rounds 5 is when he gets that finish. I think on 6 days' notice, coming off of a couch, coming off of a foot injury that pulled him out of his own title fight a month ago, that's a really tall task against Khabib. But
yeah, now Max Holloway hasn't been taken down on record in the last 4 years, and he's stuffing takedowns against guys that are nowhere as near as comparable as Khabib, but stuffed 12 takedowns against Jeremy Stephens, stuffed 6 takedowns against Ricardo Lamas. If he stays out of range, if he can land those strikes, if he can land an abundance of them, that's his only path to victory. But I think we're both on the same page here where on 6 days, first of all, that's going to be a huge killer. And now he's moving up a weight class, taking on the most dominant guy, whereas Khabib doesn't need the 21 takedowns against Trujillo. Like, once he takes you down, that's it.
And that was Khabib with a broken foot.
That's
the only reason why Trujillo was getting up and up.
But lately against Edson Barbosa, Michael Johnson, like, he's only landing 2 or 3 takedowns. That's because once he takes you down, you don't get back up. That's the difference between him and a guy like Kevin Lee or some of these other good wrestlers in the division. Yep. They'll take you down, you can work your way back up. They have to take you down again. He seems to take you down and rides you. He ties you in a pretzel
once you're down there, and he's got your leg wrapped up, he's got your arms wrapped up. It's just like you're just at his mercy when you're down there. The guy's been doing it his whole life. Like, you don't want to get into Khabib's world. When you're in Khabib's world, you're getting beaten up. But Max has the intangibles to do it. I just think coming off the couch, that cardio that he's really well known for, that's going to be kind of gone, you got to think, as well. He's not going to be in championship fight shape coming into this. That he may just be naturally have that type of cardio. But it's another factor is that if he wants to win this thing kind of late, survive first couple rounds, and then pour it on late. The fact that he's cutting so much weight leading up to it, it can't help him.
Yeah, and above all else on top of that is that he's a striker, and it's 2 different types of cardio. This guy can stand up and throw punches all day long. He's one of those guys, I bet he goes in the gym, he hits the heavy bag, he gets sparring rounds, he does kickboxing, he can go all day long. But there's a much difference from wrestling cardio and jiu-jitsu cardio. And when you have Khabib, the much bigger man, the much stronger man, riding on top of you, it's like Michael Johnson. Hey, Michael Johnson's got good cardio, but when someone sucks the soul right out of your body, and you're lying there,
I deserve this title shot.
Yeah, he's
like, tell Dana.
Just quit, Michael.
Just
and
quit.
He's just punching him.
I don't want to hurt you anymore.
Michael Johnson's like, you know what? I'm not going to succumb to strikes. And Khabib's like, I will break this arm, and just takes him. Literally is about to wrench his arm clean off of his body, and that's it. Edson Barbosa did a good job of trying to work his way back up, and when he did, just try to strike. That 3rd round, he gets back up, he tries to bring it to Khabib. But Khabib's one of these guys that's just relentless. He's not going to get you with every single takedown. The thing is, he chain wrestles through 4 takedowns.
He just never stops. He's DraftKings gold. He always is.
DraftKings gold. But my last point on it is if there is a path to victory for Max Holloway, is this guy's having a bad weight cut right now. Making championship weight's going to be tough on him. He's always been a very big 55er that struggles with the weight, and he does have knee problems. So just take him to deeper water, and even if he doesn't gas, maybe just he's hurt. Or maybe that there's going to be some damage on him. Or maybe he just doesn't have the strength at that point to secure the takedown. And you can get some strikes off, and you can make something happen. But 6 days notice, that's a heavy task. I don't see it. DraftKings gold, probably a true story.
Tough spot for anybody. Let's move on down. We got the rematch between Joanna Jedrzejczyk and Rose Namajunas. Jedrzejczyk 8,300 on DraftKings, minus 115 on the betting line. Rose Namajunas, the champion, is 7,900 plus 105. Rose not really getting any respect. Bookies kind of saying, we don't know if that was a fluke. Was it a fluke? Was it not? We were on this program kind of leading into it. We chose to ignore it, but Joanna had shown that chin is a little bit questionable leading up to it. Claudia had knocked her down. Karolina Kowalkiewicz had knocked her down before. We saw that she was susceptible to that. We saw that that's a thing. And that round 1, I think she landed 5 out of 46 strikes against Rose. Rose kind of had her number that night. Maybe she was underestimating her. I know she's saying that it's, this weight cut problem and stuff. This is a real tricky one. The one thing about this on DraftKings is that the pricing of these 2 girls, I can almost guarantee you the winner is going to pay that price tag of 8,300 or 7,900. Joanna, when she's at her best, she is just a volume machine. She was one of the staples of everybody's DraftKings teams leading up to her last loss, or her only loss of her career there against Rose. And Rose, it's probably going to be a finish, or even if it goes 5 rounds, she probably lands enough volume or you know, takes this fight to the ground, controls Joanna down there. Either way, I think picking the right winner in this on GPPs is very essential. It's really, there's so many intangibles though, it's really tough to really feel great about it either way. What's your take?
Yeah, listen, it's probably going to be a very close fight to break down because on one hand, you look at all the footage with Joanna and she just looks like the superior striker. This is likely going to be a striking battle. Yes, Rose has a great ground game and her wrestling is okay, but Joanna and Jędrzejczyk's takedown defense is awesome. So we have striker versus striker. Going down to the last fight, I think a lot of people broke it down to the T. People were picking Rose. A lot more people were picking Rose than I thought. And she goes out there and she shows that, listen, I am a good striker. I'm competent. Joanna, as you talked about, had shown some cracks with her striking defense. You can hit her. You can knock her down. When she gets knocked down, she typically gets up and recovers, but Rose never gave her that chance. She gets up. She's super cool. Rose is just always cool and calm in there. She lets her get up and then drops her a second time. And then she realizes, okay, blood in the water. I'm going to finish this fight off. Takes out Joanna. But like you're talking at the top of the show, you're biased towards Khabib. Khabib's your guy. You don't ever see that how Khabib's going to lose this fight.
It was really hard for me to try to be like neutral and unbiased.
I've always
and I
been
think I
like
did a pretty good job in the Max little discussion.
For sure, but I've always been like that with Joanna and Jędrzejczyk. I just think she is by far the best fighter in the division, and she's shown it time and time again that even if she gets dropped, she gets back up. Even if you take her into deep waters, she'll drown you. You know, like her takedown defense checks out, her striking checks out, her cardio checks out, her mental fortitude checks out. The last fight, she just kind of got ahead of herself. You know, she's talking mad shit, like mad shit, Paul. The stuff that's coming out of her mouth, pretty cringe.
The boogie woman is coming.
Yeah, that's all fair. But like telling someone you're gonna take their soul, I don't know. She was being a big bully, so I love.
That's her gig, though.
No, but it hasn't always been like that. She used to be sweet and she used to be humble, and in many ways.
I wonder what because they had a press conference today. I wonder if she went back to talking a bunch of shit or.
Well, that's just how she is. She's having trouble making the weight as well. So we talked about Khabib having trouble making the weight. Joanna's having trouble making the weight. And what that does for you is it just weakens you out because you have to draw all this liquid out of your body. You're super dehydrated. You get in there, and guess what? Your chin's not as good as it used to be. No. In Khabib's case, maybe his chin at some point goes, and a weight cut would probably be something that you could point to for why did he get dropped. If it ever happens, we'll wait and see. But with Joanna, she probably was going to win that Rose fight and go to 25. Rose beats her.
That's what she came out and said
Of course,
that.
but her pride is too much that she's going to say, okay, you know what, 25 is a better idea for me. I'm just going to go there. She needs to come back here and get the win.
Claim that belt and then leave again?
For sure. Now, historically speaking, I know you and I have talked about this many of times, but historically speaking, when a younger challenger beats the champion and they have an immediate rematch, it never goes in favor of the older
younger
champion.
fighter usually, if the younger fighter won the first time,
yeah,
they usually win the second time, except easier. Now, I don't know how much easier Rose's victory could be than what happened in their first fight, but that's a Chael Sonnenism.
You know something though? Let me just cut you off on this. Is that if you look at TJ Dillashaw versus Renan Barão, that first fight, dude, TJ smokes him. How could he do any better than that? Second time, he smokes him. He does better.
True.
If you look at the other examples of the division where that younger fighter comes up and beats the champ, Max Holloway versus Jose Aldo.
Yeah.
The first time, Jose wins the first 2 rounds in my opinion, but in that third round, it's so dominant. It's like, how could you do any better than that?
And then
you watch the second fight and it's the same thing.
He just kind of piled on even more.
Now, it's old tradition to say passing of the torch moment, you know, from one great pro wrestler to the next, from one great fighter to the next. Those moments do happen, but once you pass that torch, it doesn't usually get passed back. Rose is young, she's super talented, she's good standing, she's good on the ground, she's good for the division, she's likable, she's considered a fan favorite. I don't know that she's going to be a big pay-per-view draw, but if Joanna goes to 25 and Rose stays at 115, it's good for business. I can see people getting behind Rose. Maybe it's her time, but I'm just such a Joanna fan that if there's one thing I'm not, and many things in this world, Paul, but if there's one thing I'm not, it's a bandwagon jumper. She got caught, she got dropped. I still think she's the more talented fighter. She's going to have to show me something here. And the fact that she took the weight cut seriously, I know that just sounds like an excuse, but it's a real thing, man. These athletes put themselves through hell to make this fight. Maybe it was a bad weight cut. That's what I'm chalking it up as. But even money, like you said, they're not really showing the champion respect. Maybe the champion should be better than a plus 105, but it's pretty much an even money fight, and that's how I see it. I don't know what's going to happen. I hope Joanna wins. I think she'll win, but it's 50-50 for my money.
I see Rose out there at like plus 500 by TKO. That seems like...
she did it once rather easily, and she's got 5 rounds to operate.
Joanna, that's the one problem with her, right?
Yeah.
I think as a DraftKings strategy, though, like, I would split it up between these two. If you're playing tons of lineups, like, you want a little bit of exposure to both of these because actually,
I agree.
Because like one of them is going, the one that wins is going to probably like 7,900, 8,300. It's just like, in what world would you see them not paying that up, not getting to 8,300 or 83 points for like Joanna, or 79 points for Rose? Like if if they win, they're getting over that number. So
yeah,
I would get in on that.
Not only that, I think they're versatile players, because you play Joanna in GPP. This is a girl that's scored in her career.
Oh, and she scores like 135, 140 points. Like,
exactly.
She's a monster when she's on.
She can get 100 points just off her significant strikes.
Yep.
Fair. With Rose Namajunas, this is someone that we saw can already finish this girl in the first round. She beat Joanna in the first round. She'd score big. But also, Joanna, she got dropped in the first round against Rose. But if you look at her other fights, look at the Carolina fight. She gets dropped in, what, I believe round 3?
Yep.
The longer this fight goes, you're going to have more openings. The more openings, you can make her pay. So I like Rose on a GPP. I like Joanna in GPP. Like you said, split them up. But I don't mind stacking them in a cash game. Because if this fight does go 4 or 5 rounds, both of them are going to land more than enough shots. One of them is going to get the victory. And they're both a great price tag. Like, I can see that as another path if you want to play a cash game as opposed to that big GPP tournament.
Calvin Kattar, 8,700. Renato Moicano is 7,500. Minus 125 Kattar, plus 105 Moicano. Super, super tough fight to break down, to try to figure out who's going to get the win. We've kind of, not disrespect, we've been a little bit off Kattar. I called Kattar against Feely in his first fight.
We were at Pat's wedding, and you're like, I told you, man. I was
like,
how'd you call
I was impressed by what he did there, but the follow-up fight, I had faded him in his follow-up fight. I thought that he wasn't going to pull it off last time out, and just like, this guy's striking, this guy's boxing is super, super elite. These two guys are like those two kind of underground heroes in this featherweight division right now. That like, no, the public doesn't really know much about them, but like both of these guys are going to be like fixtures, I think, of this top 10 for years to come.
Yeah.
I'm really struck. I know, obviously, you know, if it's just 100% on the feet, Kattar, his movement, his boxing, everything about it, he's going to outland, out-volume, and probably beat Moicano. Moicano is no slouch on the feet. He can hold his own out there, but if he can get this fight to the mat, then it's a completely different ball game altogether. I don't really have a strong take on either side. Do you?
Yeah, I mean, this is a fight that hadn't had great success with either guy, because Calvin Kattar, I mean, I didn't call him versus Andre Feely, so I got that one wrong for sure. Not only does he beat him, 30-27, comes in on short notice and whips his ass. That second fight with Burgos.
I saw this like one little video where he's coming off of like, he spent 8 days in Vegas before that.
Yeah.
And like, he was just like, I had to lose 20 pounds in like 6 days. Like, it was crazy.
He also had taken like 3 years off of MMA, like retired at 24, came back at like 27. Now he's 30. What is he, 18-2? Like his 16-2?
I think he's 16.
Yeah, 16-2. His record is intensely good. He hadn't fought the greatest competition on the regional scene, but for the most part, outside of his 2 losses and maybe the split decision over Kenny Foster, which is his fight after the long layoff, he's looked pretty solid, but he comes to the UFC, he beats Feely. I didn't see that one coming. Burgos, I mean, Burgos was one of my locks of the card.
Yes,
Burgos won. I thought Burgos possibly won the first 2 rounds, but 1-1's fair. But then he starches Burgos. Like, his prior 6 fights had gone to decision, and he starches Burgos bad. Like, he's a good striker. He's super sharp. He's super technical. He does everything right. He's one of those guys that you watch, and he moves like an elite level fighter. He looks like an elite level fighter. He hadn't really had that name recognition despite a great record, but seeing him in his first 2 fights in the UFC, Burgos is the man, right? Like, that was undefeated. The guy marches down everybody. He's intensely good. He's a great striker. You gave him a striking battle and you beat him in. And in the Feely fight, Feely's a wrestler first, and he's able to stuff those takedowns. He's able to beat up Feely. He takes Feely down himself. I liked what I saw from his first 2 performances. Now, that's a guy that I hadn't given a whole lot of credit to, and not bad now. I'm seeing it, right? With Moicano, it's the same thing, man. Like, I never get his fights wrong. I didn't think he was going to beat Zubair Tuhugov. I didn't think he was going to beat Jeremy Stevens. Like, I don't see. I know he's your boy.
I've been on him
I know
every
he's your
single
boy.
one, but
I know.
But this is the one that worries me, to be honest. Like,
but again, it's like now I
think
gotta
there is
pick
a
one of the
big,
two.
like, in terms of speed and ability on the feet. Like, I think there's a big advantage for Kattar here. But Moicano, I'm thinking, I haven't seen them lined up next to each other yet, is going to be a little bit bigger. Maybe he can muscle, maybe he can push into the clinch. He doesn't want to hang out at range against Kattar, because Kattar will piece him up and move off on angles all day long. But it's really tough. Do you have a solid pick on it? Because I actually don't.
No, listen, I mean, I think they're both roughly the same size, and that's how I see the fight happening, is that he's unable to get Kattar to the ground, and Kattar's just going to piece him up. Even if he does get Kattar to the ground, Kattar's just got to obviously remain calm, but make him work. Because the thing with Moicano is if you look at Moicano in the 3rd round against Ortega. He's tired, man. Yeah. He's really tired. And the first 2 rounds aren't crazy pace, but they're going at it. And that just breaks him down, tires him out.
Really high pace.
Kattar pushes a hard pace, and if you look at how he fares in 3rd rounds, he cruises in 3rd rounds. He knocked out Burgos in the 3rd round. The guy's got good 3rd round cardio. So I think it's going to be a stand-up battle. Even if Moicano's able to take him down, he's going to be able to just remain calm, get up, land those strikes, tire him out, and either try to TKO him in the 3rd round or just win 2 of those 3 rounds, get the decision. So I'm going to take Kattar. 8,700 in DraftKings just seems crazy to me. Minus 125, it's obviously a risky fight, but I would be more susceptible to taking a play on the money line and kind of staying away from it in terms of DK purposes.
Michael Chiesa, 8,600. Anthony Showtime Pettis, 7,600. Minus 140 Chiesa. Plus 120 Anthony Showtime Pettis. Interesting fight when you start thinking about it. And the problem that you run into a bunch of the times is you start thinking about what Pettis was. Because, like, on paper, for what Pettis was, this is an awesome stylistical matchup. He should be, in theory, the guy that we knew, the guy who was the champion of this division, would be able to stop all of Michael Chiesa's takedown attempts.
Why? Was he ever a good wrestler?
No, but I think you'd be. Chiesa doesn't have the best offensive wrestling.
No, but he's very strong.
He's very strong.
Once he clinches up with you,
what I'm
that's
saying
when
is
he makes it
that
work.
Pettis doesn't get subbed, and he's super, super solid off of his back.
That's fair.
On the feet, there would be a big advantage for Pettis. But the problem with all of this and all of this thinking and all of this that I've got, and like that was my original thoughts when I saw this fight get made. You just can't trust Pettis anymore. The guy that we are thinking of, the guy who was on the Wheaties box, the guy who won championships, he's gone. He's gone, and I don't think he's coming back. In theory, this is a great matchup, I think, for him. Even if he gets taken down, just survive on the feet. Michael Chiesa is still pretty rudimentary up there. He's got some power in his shots, but like we're not debating who's the better, overall striker with the kicks that Pettis has and all of that. But he just may get backed up to the fence, kind of controlled, taken down, survived down there. Could be kind of ugly, and if it's an ugly fight, it's Michael Chiesa. So I don't really want either one of these guys on DraftKings. I don't really want to bet against Chiesa because I know that if Pettis shows up, if that guy that we've been waiting on for the last 2-3 years shows up finally again, I think he could piece him up on the feet, but that's my take here. Pettis maybe is like a GPP flyer on DraftKings. Maybe he lands a big body kick or something like that, but otherwise I'm steering clear.
Yeah, dude, I've pretty much written him off at this point. I hear 100% what you're saying. You think about the good old days.
Yeah.
Oh, man, weren't those so fun? Remember Paul? Remember when he was running off the cage, kicking people in the head, Paul? Remember when he was literally sending Joe Lauzon into the Shadow Realm in Japan? Oh, man, I remember. Remember when we body kicked Donald Cerrone and armbarred Benson Henderson?
I do.
Oh, I remember. Those days are over, dude. Because I always think the same thing with Johnny Hendricks. I never bet Johnny Hendricks, but using him as the same model, it's like, yeah, this guy's shot. But in theory, he should just take down Neil Magny, but then he loses. It's like, okay, this guy's shot. But I mean, in theory, he could take down Tim Boach.
This happened with Renan Barão not that long ago.
Renan Barão, Johnny Hendricks. Yeah. I'm going to give Chris Weidman the benefit of the doubt that I think he's a super talented guy, and I think that because the division's so thin that a guy like Weidman could work his way back up. But again, maybe I'm just living in the past. Maybe I'm living in this, man, remember when these guys were super good and were on these awesome rolls? I mean, this is fighting. It passes you by quickly. Anthony Pettis used to be like that young kid on the block where it's like, oh, bright, shining prospect. Oh, he wins the championship. Oh, he's so young. He's so flashy. Michael Chiesa is actually the younger athlete. We got to remember now that Anthony Pettis is 31 years old. He's not that young guy anymore. But in the fights, by the way, look at the list of guys he's fighting. Only the best.
Of course.
So maybe part of me, at least with Hendricks, it's like he starts to lose to gatekeepers and he starts to lose to journeymen, and then it's a huge concern. But the same thing with Weidman. It's like if you're losing to the best guys in the division, like maybe it's just not going your way. Maybe Pettis could have that fair shake. The issue with Pettis is that even if he's losing to the great guys, he's getting taken down by all of them. Outside of Barbosa, who was like, I will just beat you striking.
Yeah.
He's never been a big 55er. So he tries 45 and obviously can't make that, so he's got to come back to 55. But if Poirier's taking you down 5 times and you're barely squeaking by Jim Miller, who also had a takedown in Anthony Pettis, I mean, all of his recent fights, the Charles Oliveira fight, if you put Charles Oliveira next to Michael Chiesa, the size advantage is crazy. Michael Chiesa is a big dude, and he realizes he can just take down Anthony Pettis and is better on the ground. That being said, Pettis is way faster, and he's got the kicks. He's a much better striker. So I'm like you, man. I kind of sway back and forth in that, like, I need a dog. I'd love to have a dog, even though he's not a sizable dog. The plus 120, not great. Could I see Anthony Pettis staying to the outside and just working him and beating him and striking? Yeah, I've seen Chiesa lay a couple eggs. Remember that Mitch Clark fight? Terrible fight. Remember like the Jim Miller fight? He's actually down 1 round. He loses the first round to Miller. The Beneil Dariush fight? He loses the first round to Beneil Dariush. The Kevin Lee fight? Kevin Lee chokes him out in the first round. He didn't tap, but all the same, it's not like Michael Chiesa is perfect. It's not like he's some supreme athlete. He's been on the sidelines for a year, but again, he's a much bigger guy. He was always training at Sick Jitsu in Spokane, Washington, and sort of splitting a little bit of time in Las Vegas. He's now full-time in Las Vegas at the UFC Performance Institute. That'll help him with the weight cut. That'll help him with all the science and technology of the game, but also full-time at Syndicate MMA. So I expect to see a better version of him. I expect to see in-shape, healthy version of him. But he's got to have the ring IQ to realize I can easily hold him up against the cage and dirty box him and try for takedowns. Don't stay at bay with him. Don't stay in the middle of the octagon, throw strikes with him. That's a bad way to lose a couple rounds and get lost down a decision. I don't see Pettis knocking out Chiesa. But that being said, Pettis has got some flashy strikes, a nasty body kick. Perhaps it's a possibility, but I can't just trust Pettis just because he used to be something special. He's got to reinvent himself. He's got to build back up.
I don't. We always talk about guys that own like lots of gyms. He owns a lot of businesses and gyms, all those things. Once he got to the pinnacle, it's just like it's really hard to focus all of your energy on getting better because everybody else is getting better. And he kind of just seems to have stagnated once he won that belt.
Yeah, the other thing, too, is you got to kind of look at a guy that might be half lost. Because as soon as his streak started to go bad, his first thought was, I'll just go to 45, but it didn't work. Then his second thought is, I got to switch camps. And he goes to Jackson Winklejohn, and it doesn't work. No. So that's a guy that's looking for something and doesn't quite seem to know what it is. It's easy for us to sit here at this desk and say, man, Anthony Pettis has lost it. Like, that's a dick move, I get it. But Anthony Pettis probably stays up at night and thinks to himself, like, where did I go wrong? What can I do different? Like, he's not a dummy. He realizes that. That guy used to travel with a barber on the road, cutting his hair every 2 days. Now he's like, man, I miss Pete. Wish I could afford his salary these days, but shit's gone south. Needs to get back on track. I do see a path to victory for him here, but I got to rely on the bigger, stronger grinder to make it that ugly fight and to prevail in it. So give me Michael Chiesa minus 140. And as far as the DK line goes, I don't love it, but 7,600 on Anthony Pettis. If you're looking at a punt or looking to save some money somewhere, I think he's going to be able to last. And as long as he's not just on his back the whole time, he'll score some points. Absolutely. Let's move on down. We got Iaquinta taking on Paul Felder. Iaquinta 8,200 on DraftKings. Felder is 8,000 minus 120. Iaquinta plus 100. Felder. Iaquinta, is he in the UFC? Is he not in the UFC? He's usually selling real estate, and then when he doesn't get a bonus, he usually yells at the UFC on Twitter, and and they're just like, well, this is the exact reason why we don't give you bonuses, because you put us on blast every single time you fight. He's Raging Al for a reason. Raging Al. This is the guy that he is. This is an interesting fight, though. I think Raging Al's got the better wrestling. He's real game. He's super strong. He's durable as hell. And Paul Felder, the one thing about him is he makes boneheaded mistakes all the time. He does really stupid shit. Puts himself in really bad positions. The one, it's like against. But the thing about it is he never really quits on himself either. It's just like, that last fight, or at least I was, I don't know about you, but I was on Charles Oliveira, and everything was lining up perfectly. Like, I remember I even told Pat, I was just like, Oliveira gets the fight to the ground, gets on top, has top control for like 4 minutes. Just like, that's when I'm playing Charles Oliveira against anybody on DraftKings, just like, how you want it. That's all I'm looking for. Yeah. And Felder was able to fight out of it. And then as soon as, like, in round 2, he got him down there again, and then Felder fought out of it. It's just like, oh, no, this is when Chucky Olives quits. And sure enough, Felder completely put him away, like, viciously. So good on him. Like, you can see the improvements in his ground game are definitely there. Iaquinta is just such a wild card, because the thing about it is that, like, even though he doesn't fight all that often and he seemingly hates fighting, it's like when he shows up on fight day,
He shows up to fight. Like, he doesn't lay too many eggs. I'm leaning Iaquinta here, but a lot of that is just on feel and the fact that, like, I just think he's the smarter overall fighter in terms of, like, actual fight IQ while he's in there. But it's close to a pick'em for a reason. What's your take?
Yeah, I got to go with Iaquinta as well. I don't like the fact that he takes these huge layoffs. I mean, he had 2 years off because of a knee injury. He comes back, looks awesome. And then he's sat off a year. I mean, he's always complaining about something. He's clearly got an issue with the UFC. He's part of this Project Spearhead with Leslie Smith, basically trying to get... They're not trying to unionize the UFC as much as they're trying to get the UFC just to admit that they're employees and not subcontractors. But where's his head at? I don't know. But you could make the same argument with Paul Felder, who's got a UFC commentating gig as well right now. They're both kind of early 30 guys that... Are they going to get a title shot? Probably not. Are they going to be that top 10, top 15 gatekeeper status? Absolutely. Do they love to fight? Absolutely. Are they super entertaining and exciting? Absolutely. This is a fun fight to put together.
Very fun fight.
But with Felder, Felder's got a job outside of the UFC, and that's commentating. He's pretty good at it. Paul Felder actually went to acting school way back in the day, so he's comfortable in front of a camera. Whereas Iaquinta, he's got his side business of being a realtor. He's also got a one-fight deal with the UFC that I believe pays him $50,000 for this one fight. So he's not going out there looking to lay an egg. Like, he's got to go out there and he's got to win so that he can demand more money for another fight, which he'll probably take in a year's time. But I think the wrestling advantage will be the big thing for him. Paul Felder is awesome striker, good Muay Thai stylist, actually more of a kickboxing stylist than a Muay Thai stylist, pretty decent boxing as well. I worked with a guy back in the day, Billy Briscoe, he's out of Philadelphia, Gabe Rosado's former head coach, actually they still work together, and he was talking to me about Paul Felder because they're both from Philadelphia. He says Paul Felder's boxing is super underrated. He's a great striker, he's a good kickboxer, comes from a obviously good striking pedigree, he's got the goods, but when I look at him in fights against other elite level strikers, I'm not talking about Stevie Ray, I'm not talking about Alex Ricci, I'm talking about elite level strikers. He gets a tad bit gun shy. So just looking at it real quick, him versus Edson Barbosa, which is a great fight, and Edson Barbosa is able to edge him out. His next fight against Ross Pearson. Ross Pearson's like that fringe contender of elite level striker.
Yeah.
But Felder doesn't really do anything, right? They kind of get into a slot where they respect each other so much, he doesn't pull the trigger, he loses that fight. Him versus Darren Cruikshank, he's down 2 rounds. He's getting taken down and controlled by Cruikshank before coming back. Berkman, come on, it's Berkman, and he had to beat him by decision. Again, Francisco Trinaldo, a guy that's very good on the ground and an elite level striker. He's able to back up Paul Felder. He's able to kind of mix things up, have Paul Felder thinking. He stops Paul Felder in that fight, but it was a cut stoppage. But he lands a number of huge shots on Felder. And so when Felder takes on the Alex Ricci's and the Stevie Rays and the Charles Oliveira's of the world, he can beat them standing. He can take them to the ground and not have to worry about it. He can beat those guys. But with Iaquinta, I don't see him taking down Ray Janelle. I see Ray Janelle having that wrestling ability to take down Felder if he wants. If he gets in trouble, take Felder down, take Felder, grind him. I get all that. And if it stays standing, look at the way this guy's always moving forward. I mean, look at his own fight with Ross Pearson. If you look at both of those fights for Ross Pearson being the common opponent, against Paul Felder, Ross Pearson sets up shop on the outside. He's allowed to do whatever he wants. He's allowed to throw whatever strikes he wants. And he's a comfortable rhythm fight where both guys are basically just glorified sparring match. When Iaquinta fights Ross Pearson's backpedaling trying to get the hell out of there because Ray Janelle marches him down the whole time and throws those shots. So I feel like that aggression is going to allow him to just back up Felder, try to shoot the takedown. When you do get him on the ground, just enough to score rounds. I don't see him knocking out Paul Felder. I don't see him submitting Paul Felder. But can he beat Paul Felder over the course of 3? I think so. Looking at the price, $8,200 for Iaquinta, I think that's a very fair price. The takedowns will score you well. The striking will score you well. A decision victory, which is obviously what we're looking for here.
And Ray Janelle, as you're saying, just kind of moves forward. He tries to make it a high-volume fight every single time. He's
got massive, massive power. And I'm not saying Paul Felder does, but if both guys get into a gunfight, I'm liking it. And as far as how his chin goes, holds out pretty good. George Masvidal lit him up in that first round, but he had the cognitive ability to come back. And even though I didn't see him winning that fight, he just went back to the basics and just tried to do a little bit enough to outpoint Masvidal, somehow got the win.
To convince 2 out of 3 judges that he did get the win.
So it's possible he can do the same thing against Felder if Felder does the same thing and gets gun shy and just allows Iaquinta to do a little bit more. So I'm going to have to go with Al. It's a close fight, obviously. Line dictates that.
Karolina Kowalkiewicz takes on Felice Herrig on the prelims portion of the card. It's the main event of the prelims, I guess you could say. 9,000 for Kowalkiewicz. And 7,200 for Herrig, minus 190 for Karolina, plus 165 Herrig. One thing I will say about Herrig, very undercursed.
Oh, did she get
I
Andrew
was
Curse?
saying last night, we're filming on the, it was, so last night I put something on Twitter about like, plus 180 Herrig's getting real tempting. And then Tim jumped in and said, go Herrig. So it just like tucked me off the ledge immediately.
When I actually heard about Tony Ferguson pulling out of the fight, my first thought was, as everybody, oh, shitty April Fool's joke. My second thought was, you were like, Ferguson or Khabib, Tim? And Tim was like, Ferguson. Is like, oh, there goes
then
his
he tripped
knee.
over a wire.
Then he trips over a fucking wire at a Fox studio. Like, talk about dumb luck. But hey, that's what happens when you get Andrew Curse. There's no way. Actually, the fight with Khabib and Ferguson 4 times it's been scratched. It's pretty much Andrew Curse at this point.
That's the most cursed fight ever. I don't know if it's ever going to happen.
Well, it has
Which
to.
is saddening because
the
it's
two
such
best
an
guys.
amazing matchup. Like, Khabib wins on Saturday. I think they're going to try to set up Conor. Like, that's
Conor wants no part.
I don't think
Well,
Conor
we'll have
wants
to see how
either.
this fight plays out.
Either way, let's go back to the strawweight division here.
Okay, so
Carolina
Herrig is
versus
under
Herrig.
Curse. That's the problem?
I think that this is a relatively close fight. There's a lot of dynamics to this, but Carolina, I think, is the better striker, more flashy striker, probably a little bit quicker. She's really, really good in the clinch too. But Herrig is shown to be very, very well-rounded. She gets this fight to the ground, and she's able to find Kowalkiewicz's back. I could see her pulling off the upset here. I haven't made a move on it whatsoever, but I was hoping, like, if it gets up to like plus 200, it's just like, I think this is like a 60-40, maybe even a 50-50 split between the two of them. I think this is a pretty close fight, and it's not really priced that way. So the initial lean is Herrig. I don't know if I'm going to make a move on it. 7,200 on DraftKings. I think you're going to get at least 3 rounds out of Felice Herrig. If she's getting takedowns and stuff, she's looking pretty good there. That kind of happened in her last fight against Courtney Casey. Courtney Casey, really good grappler on the ground, but we all kind of thought, oh, well, you know, Herrig should be able to take Casey down. She never really went for it, which is a little bit troubling, and that kind of bothers you as someone trying to roster, is that you can't really trust her to follow the game plan that you think is the best for her. She ended up winning in a real close fight, but Herrig is a person who got a lot of heat, you know, because the way she markets herself, she got beat by Paige Van Zandt. If they fought again, the improvements that we've seen with Felice Herrig, I think Felice Herrig rules all over Paige Van Zandt. I think it's a close fight in this division. Like, they're kind of interchangeable gatekeepers, I think, in the future of this division. It's a dog or pass kind of situation, one would say. Yeah,
I had the same thoughts early looking at this fight. I thought, geez, you know what? Felice Herrig always she's always got great value on her, because nobody believes in Felice Herrig. This is a girl that had a 6-4 record prior to getting onto The Ultimate Fighter. Lost to Ronda Marcos by submission, which a very rudimentary submission, like that setup on the ground for that Kimura. Brutal. She comes to the UFC, she beats Lisa Ellis, and then she loses to Paige Van Zandt. I hear you, man. Complete write-off, but ever since then, she's super well-rounded. She's been in this game for a long time. She comes from a kickboxing background, an amateur kickboxing background, but that's why her striking is really not all that bad. But she spent a lot of time in Crystal Lake, Illinois with Jeff Curran and his entire team, and she's a strong girl. If you follow her on social media, which you should probably follow her on social media. She's always in the gym, dude. The girl's a fitness model. She's in tremendous shape. The time I met her, she has no fight coming up. It's just just a regular encounter. And she is ripped. Carla Esparza, fat. But Felice Herrig, ripped. She's in great shape all the time. She wants this so bad. She grinds so hard that she comes into these fights, and if you overlook her even the slightest bit, she can make you pay. But none of these fights that she's getting victories in can be considered sexy by no stretch. Kaylin Curran, she submits her, but Kaylin Curran is the nut low of women's MMA in the UFC. However, the Alexa Grasso fight, Grasso's a highly touted prospect, and Felice Herrig just does enough, man. Just does enough to win these rounds over a young, green prospect. The Justine Kish fight. Close fight, but Justine Kish, just massive holes in her grappling game. Felice Herrig, just enough to exploit them. The Courtney Casey fight, just enough striking to get the nods on those scorecards. And she's just squeaking through here, which is good for her. She's overachieving. She's coming in as the underdog for the most part. She's beating these girls. She's putting a win streak together. She's moving up the division. All good for her. But it's going to be a cold day in hell before I want to put money on Felice Herrig.
As far as like plus 200.
Again, as far as the DraftKings go, 7,200, that's a great price.
Yeah.
And plus 165, you're right. If it was plus 200, it's very tempting because in my mind, she's stronger than Karolina. And Karolina's shown that you can take her down. She's good off her back, sure. But if you get into these grappling exchanges with her, like just whip her to the ground, like a Claudia Gadelha, for example, just be stronger than her and
Claudia's,
ground her.
I've seen people make that argument. It's like Claudia's so much stronger.
So much stronger, absolutely. But the path to victory for beating Karolina, which is getting this girl to the ground, unless you can outstrike her over the course of 3 rounds or 5 rounds, I don't see that happening for Felice Herrig just based on volume. Karolina throws a lot more, therefore she's going to be landing more, therefore she's going to be doing enough to persuade the judges. But if Felice Herrig could use that size and use that strength and pin her up against the cage and maybe complete some takedowns and make this a grindy, greasy affair, then yeah, we've seen in the past, she just does enough to win these rounds. But I got to go Karolina, and that's based on the fight with her last fight against Jodie Esquibel. Jodie Esquibel's a meat grinder too, man. She's short, she's stocky, she's very, very strong. Keith Jardine's wife, trains at Jackson's Winklejohn, had a good game plan, came in, and Karolina absolutely dominated. She looked better in that fight than I'd seen her in a long time. This is a girl that's very good on the ground. She's very good standing, and like you mentioned, she's great in the clinch. So even if Felice Herrig wants to clinch her up, which I think is her path to victory, or clinch her up and use that size, she's got to deal with those knees in the clinch. She's got to deal with that awesome 3-round cardio, just pushing the pace and throwing strikes and kind of battering her up. The price is not great on Karolina, but definitely not for the 9,000, don't get me wrong. But as far as who my pick is, I think I got to go with Karolina Kowalkiewicz.
We got Ray Borg taking on Brandon Moreno. Ray Borg, 9,200 on DraftKings, minus 280 on the betting line. Brandon Moreno, 7,000 plus 240. It's pretty kind of straightforward how I see this one playing out. This is kind of the fight, too, on the DraftKings slate that could be like that natural pivot because let's face it, people are going to play Khabib, people are going to play Zabit, and around there is our boy Ray Borg, who his path is he's probably going to try to land takedowns, and when he gets on top, all he has to worry about is that the patented guillotine that Moreno has. But on the feet, it'll probably be real sloppy, wild stuff from Moreno until Borg finds his opening, slams him, takes him down. So Borg is kind of that natural pivot in that range if you want to go that way. You know how I feel about Russian fighters, so I don't know if I'm going that way, but I can see a case on DraftKings for him to be played. Moreno has kind of been the upset king and the guy who's not supposed to be here all the way along, but I think Borg, after facing DJ, I think we're going to see a lot of improvements from him. I think he gets the win here. I'm not loving the price at minus 280, almost minus 300, but Borg is my straight pick. I'll probably be fading him on DraftKings just because I like the other 2 Russians more, but I can see the argument for it as well.
Yeah, if you got to save some money and you're looking at those top plays, I mean, yes, Khabib looks pretty solid, 9,200. Yes, Zabit looks super solid, 9,500. Ray Borg, same price as Khabib. Khabib's got 5 rounds to work with. Khabib's taking on a guy that's taking on 6 days' notice, so I prefer Khabib in that slot, but I see Ray Borg as being a guy that could definitely score his worth here. He should be able to just take down Moreno almost at will. Ray Borg is very, 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 very strong for a flyweight. Yes, against Demetrius Johnson. Demetrius Johnson's going to be one of these guys that's going to be very hard to take down. But, I mean, remember we used to call Ray Borg like the scramble master. The guy just usually gets into mad scrambles with you and outworks you. He's got decent striking in the sense that he's not a rangy guy, but he closes the distance, closes that pocket. He's got a huge overhand right. He's a short, stocky, powerful guy. And against Moreno just gets taken down fairly easily. Moreno's one of those guys that he's got that move, he's got that flash-in-the-pan guillotine like you talked about, but the Lewis Smolka fight, it just happens really quick. He snags up that guillotine choke. Good for him, right? The Dustin Ortiz fight, I mean, it's a second-round submission, but it's like, damn, I certainly didn't see that coming. Good for him. The Sergio Pettis fight, he wins the first round, and then after that, that's when you start to see holes in his game. He's not as perfect as everybody thinks. He's only 22 years old. He's still a very young kid. I think he's got a lot of growing to do, and they're giving him the top-end guys of the division because he's had success so far. But he's got to get, humble a little bit, grow a little bit, work on that wrestling, develop as a fighter, and he'll be able to get back to fighting the best guys in the world. But this is Ray Borg, fresh off a title challenge, who is probably, in most people's opinion, a top. It's him, Joseph Benavidez, Henry Cejudo, and Demetrius Johnson. He's a bona fide top 4, top 5 guy in the division. Whereas I just see Brandon Moreno as being that guy that's a top 15 at best. It's going to take some work. Yes, he beat Dustin Ortiz, who I'm very high on. But again, if those guys fight 10 times, I don't know that happens 10 times. And I don't know that Brandon Moreno is not one of these guys that just has had some good success. He's had a couple flashy victories, and that's why people buy into him. The one thing I'd really like against with Borg in the situation is that Moreno's competent. If you take him down, maybe he'll get back up and then just get taken right back down. So I think Borg's going to be able to score a lot of points in the takedowns. And as we talked about Borg being that scramble master, when he takes you down, it's usually like half guard, side control, you explode back up, he gets you back down. He does a lot of ground transitions. He's got a nasty rear naked choke. He could get a submission here. He's got path to victory here to get that finish and score big points, or just completely outgrind him and score big points. So the 9,200, I don't mind it. Problem is, it's going to be very hard to afford him if you want other plays like Khabib and Zabit. So
who are all great plays. Like that's the big decision you have to make up top here.
But the people who really like Khabib, yourself included, if I'm looking at ownership on DraftKings, Khabib's going to be way more owned.
Of course, Borg is going to be the guy who's under-owned out of those top three, because it goes 9,200,
95, 92, 92.
No, Khabib's 91.
Oh, okay.
I wrote it wrong on this sheet.
Whatever.
But
so he's
right in between the two. So Khabib's $100 cheaper than Borg.
Yeah. But again, if you are playing a big GPP and you want Khabib and you want Borg and you somehow want Zabit, there are those plays on this card, mainly Felice Herrig at 7,200.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about
there's going to be more to break down.
Chris Gruetzemacher, 7,300. Joe Lauzon might be shot.
Let's get into that one. We got Lauzon taking on Gruetzemacher, 8,900 for Lauzon, minus 165. Gruetzemacher is 7,300 plus 145. Is Joe Lauzon shot? Because the problem is that this guy, I think I was listening to like Rob Brown on Twitter. He has a new podcast. Give that a listen. But he was saying, he pulled up a stat that like Joe Lauzon has absorbed over 1,000 significant strikes in his UFC career. So that's not good for anyone. When you're in wars like this, like that is awful news. And it's just the guy's been such a warrior. The guy was the biggest bonus guy. You just want a bonus every single fight. Those types of things happen all the time. And that's going to catch up with you. And like, he can't really take the damage anymore. He's a total front runner. It's like if he doesn't put you away in the first 4 minutes now, it's like he fades away. And Gruetzemacher, I am not high on this guy at all. But the one thing about him is that he has a good gas tank, and he's going to keep coming into rounds 2 and 3. He had a pretty close fight against Davey Ramos.
I thought he won that second round.
Last fight.
And minus a couple takedowns. Yeah, he didn't look all that bad.
He didn't look all that bad. He may have what it takes, and it's like we're starting to see a bunch of these. It's just like the old war horse is starting to die, and Joe Lauzon could be the one that is on his way out here. 7,300 Gruetzemacher, like I don't hate it. I don't know if he's my... He's totally worth rostering. I don't think I'll be owning any Joe Lauzon. I'm just going to basically pray, because I like other people up in this range. Like I even like Borg more up in this range. I'm just going to pray that Lauzon doesn't get that first round finisher from a DraftKings perspective. And full fade on Joe Lauzon, maybe a little bit of Gruetzemacher. What you take?
Yeah, I feel like Joe Lauzon's always kind of been a front runner. I mean, you look at the entirety of his career, he's a bonus hunter. He's a guy that goes out there and tries to get the job done as quick as possible in the best fashion possible to try to get that bonus out of it. But even look back way throughout his career, the fights with Sam Stout, the fights with Jim Miller, if he goes out there and you push a pace on him, he can keep a pace up with you, but then he fades out. The last number of years haven't been sexy for him. He looked good against Diego Sanchez, against possibly another fighter who may be considered shot. And then ever since then, I just haven't really seen it. I mean, he got likely robbed against Jim Miller, albeit not a very good fight whatsoever, and he was getting severely outstruck by Jim Miller on the feet. He's just able to take Jim Miller down and out-grapple him. His fight with Marcin Held, he likely gets the robbery in that fight, in a fight that he gets taken down against Marcin Held and gets out-grappled. And his last fight, a good friend of mine actually, we were just briefly talking about this fight, just, shooting the shit, so to speak, and he says, do you think Joe Lauzon's going to run through this guy? I said, I don't know, man. Like, Gruetzemacher is one of those guys that he doesn't look like a very aesthetically pleasing fighter.
He got knocked out by Lobov.
Yeah, dude. But that's the only time he's ever been knocked out, mind you. And Lobov does throw some heavies. I says, I don't know if Joe Lauzon's chin is gone. He goes, yeah, but is Gruetzemacher even a power puncher? This is fair. He's not. But is Clay Guida even a power puncher?
No.
No, he's not. He's typically a guy that beats you by decision and grinds you. So whereas I think that Gruetzemacher's probably... He's not as good of a striker as Joe Lauzon, and he's not as good as the ground as Joe Lauzon, but he's a better wrestler than Joe Lauzon, and he's also got better cardio than Joe. So what we see in Gruetzemacher's fights is, look at that Davi Ramos fight. When he's getting taken down, Davi Ramos is a bona fide gangster on the ground. This is a guy that his credentials are almost second to none in the division. He's very, very good on the ground. And Gruetzemacher does eventually succumb to the submission, but when he is getting taken down initially, he's not that bad on the ground. It's when he gets up, he's always moving forward, he's landing shots. I thought he did enough to win that second round against Ramos, and then unfortunately he loses in the third round. But against Joe Lauzon, if he can keep the fight standing and march down Joe and land those shots, we don't know where Joe's equilibrium is. Like you mentioned, over 1,000 shots landed. Joe Lauzon made his UFC debut in 2006 when he knocked out my then favorite fighter, Jens Bolver, in like 48 seconds. The guy's got 12 years under his belt in this sport. His chin's typically not been that bad. So just because Clay knocked him out in his last fight, it's not an indication that's completely shot. Maybe he still got the ability to go out there and get the job done. But I'm worried for him. And on a card that I like a lot of these favorites, which favorite's going to shit in my apple pie? Maybe it's going to be Joe Lauzon. The 8,900 on Joe Lauzon, I mean, yeah, he is that bonus hunter. Maybe he could get the finish, but I don't personally like it.
No.
And the minus 165, not trustworthy. Joe Lauzon is a fan favorite. He's one of those guys that will never be a Hall of Famer, but he's a Hall of Famer to a lot of people. He's provided a lot of entertainment, but he's not trustworthy at this current stage of his career. For that reason, I have to dog or pass, and sadly, Gruetzemacher's the dog, so maybe I'm going to have some small shares in Gruetzemacher and see what happens. He might have just got Saftic out of that, but we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Evan Dunham taking on Olivier Aubin-Mercier. Both guys 8,100 on DraftKings. Evan Dunham minus 140 favorite. Aubin-Mercier plus 120. Who do you like here?
Yeah, always love me some Aubin-Mercier. Obviously got to support those Canadian fighters, but I don't know, man. I mean, he was a prospect for a long time, tri-star pupil, also H2O MMA guy out of Quebec. Good grappler, good judo background. I think he was on like the junior Olympic squad for Canada. Comes into the UFC, very green, goes through the Ultimate Fighter, loses to Chad Laprise. But honestly, dude, like, his prospect days are over. He's 29 years old at this point, and it's like piss or get off the pot. Because if you look at just a rundown of his record, he loses that tough finale against Chad Laprise, and Chad Laprise is badass. No problem there. Chad Laprise is top end guy. So he beats Jake Lindsay, who's, you know,
librarian.
We're gonna classify as a scrub.
Low.
David Michaud. I really like David Michaud, but we're gonna have to classify him as a scrub.
Nah, it doesn't belong at this level.
Tony Sims, my boy, but fuck, Tony Sims couldn't win a fight.
He proved that he didn't belong in this. And if he took him down, he was done.
He just didn't, right? Now, Carlos Diego Ferreira, now he's a great fighter. Now, Carlos Diego Ferreira is able to just completely out-grapple Olivier Aubin-Mercier because he's a third-degree black belt versus Aubin-Mercier's just a black belt. He's much better on the ground. He's much better standing. He outworks OAM, and he gets the decision. So he loses that fight, which is his first step up because the other guys, I mean, we listed them as scrubs. Then Thibaut Gowdy. Come on, we gotta list him as a scrub. Exciting fighter, but we gotta list him as a scrub. Drew Dober, scrub. Tony Martin's a tough guy. And I thought Tony Martin actually beat Olivier Aubin-Mercier. And that's my issue, is that he's fighting these not even middle of the pack guys, these lower end guys, and he's getting the submission. He shows off a little bit of striking improvements. His grappling is obviously good. But the times that he's going to step up, that's when he's going to struggle. And against Carlos Diego Ferreira, he steps up and he loses that fight. Against Tony Martin is a less than top 15 guy. And, you know, he does struggle in spots against Tony Martin. At the end of that fight, you look at them right before they do the decision. Olivier thinks he lost that fight, man. I mean, he definitely loses that third round. He probably thinks he's behind the scorecards. He looks disappointed. He gets his hand raised and he's ecstatic. He's like, oh, you know, in his little French accent, super, super happy that he was, in his opinion, gifted this decision. I thought Martin won, but it's a very close fight. Not appealing. But now he's got to jump up and take on Evan Dunham. He's supposed to take on Gilbert Burns. Burns too heavy to get the fight, so he has to sit on the sideline for 2 months. Was his body peaking? Does the 2 months change anything? I don't know, but a little question mark that's added. But with Evan Dunham, he's not going to be able to take down Evan Dunham. I mean, Evan Dunham's a way better wrestler than him.
There's people out there who thinks that he will be able to. I don't know if I think it's a real stagnated type of situation. I think both of the wrestling kind of washes each other out. Like, I'm not sure who's going to really... I think it kind of stays on the feet.
Okay, fair. So it stays on the feet. And with Evan Dunham, I mean, that last fight against Beneil Dariush, he was seriously rocked in that first round. But If you don't knock out Evan Dunham, he's going to keep coming, and he does keep coming, and he wins rounds 2 and 3.
He's got good, sharp, technical kind of striking.
His boxing has come a long way.
Yeah,
He's good in the clinch. He's got good dirty boxing. His wrestling's obviously good, and even if the fight does hit the ground, he's also a black belt. 36 years old, been around the game for a long time, but a savvy veteran. And those type of savvy veterans who are good everywhere, they're going to teach a guy like Aubin-Mercier, who's fought lower-level competition and hasn't really had... I mean, look at the guys that
We haven't really seen Dunham
fought.
fall off of a cliff yet.
Yeah, look at the guys he's fought, man.
Yeah.
Like the who's, and he has success. So I do think he's gonna have to start showing some cracks at 36 years old. I do think he's gonna start slowing down at some point at 36 years old. But those technical, savvy, gritty veterans, they're going to pull slots out, and I think Evan Dunham's able to do that. The minus 140, yeah, I mean, I thought is more of a pick'em fight, but Dunham, in my opinion, is the favorite, and I guess a small favorite he is. The $8,100 for Dunham, I don't know that he's going to be high scoring, because if he's unable to take down Aubin-Mercier, and he's not just completely crowding him with shots, he's not going to score overly well, but 8,100 in a cash game situation, I could still see some use out of him.
Alex Caceres takes on Artem Lobov in the People's main event. The Flowmaster back in action here. Caceres is 8,500 on DraftKings, Lobov 7,700, minus 145. Caceres plus 125, Lobov.
Lobov's greatest of all
I got
time.
Lobov here, man.
He's the greatest of all time, Paul.
I actually just have Lobov. We talked about before the Ishihara fight, and I think this is very, very similar. He's taking on a southpaw. It's kind of flashy, good movement, and that's essentially what Alex Caceres is. The exact same type of mobility, type of movement. Everything about Caceres kind of reminds me of what Ishihara is in. Ishihara likes darting a little bit more in and out, but and I think Caceres' ground game and ability to get to the back is much better. I just don't know if the wrestling ability of his is all that great. And in wrestling, as we always say, kind of favors the shorter fighter. Caceres is going to be taller than Lobov as well. I think it's going to be. I think this fight's going to play out very, very similarly. This is like the one time that Lobov isn't going out there against guys with like way better records than him. It's like 13-11 versus like
they're both
14-4. Yeah, exactly. I think Lobov, Connor. I'm guessing Connor's going to be in attendance at this event as well. He may not, but I feel as though this is a perfect matchup for Lobov to get another W here. He loves taking on southpaws. It's the type of fighter when you're training with Conor McGregor, that is the guy that you are most comfortable against, and I think. Very similar to the Ishihara fight, which we were both on Lobov against Ishihara. The price was a little bit better than this. I made a play already on Lobov. I don't feel great about it. It's Lobov at the end of the day, but plus money, plus 125, Lobov, I'm in on it. Yeah,
both guys are going to have a path to victory here. I mean, Lobov could definitely, like you said, march him down, throw those heavy, heavy hammers. Caceres has had some trouble against shorter, stockier guys that march him backwards. His last fight against Gwen Wang, I don't think most people saw that coming. He got dropped. That fight with Francisco Rivera back in the day, where he got
iced in the first round.
Yeah, by guys like 5'6" and has a small little reach on him.
Guys who are not afraid to move forward. That's what Lobov does.
Move forward and throw overhand shots and hooks, and yeah, dude, absolutely. So when I think about it, I think, geez, yeah, Lobov could definitely move him back, land those shots. Lobov's got a lot of power, man. The thing is, he's got a 65-inch reach. Oh, yeah. So he typically doesn't really land most of those shots, but he backs you up, and when he does land them, he's got a lot of power. The thing that I can't really get behind for him is that the last fight with Andre Fili, he had whatever is less than 0 takedown defense is what he had. Like, Fili was shooting from a distance out, not setting it up, and barely driving through it, and Lobov would just fall right onto his ass. So the thing with Bruce Leroy is when you talk about Bruce Leroy and Ishihara, I suppose there's some similarities because they have that long, rangy frame. But yeah, no, he doesn't dart in and out. He's way better grappler. He's a much better wrestler. And he's got a varied kick game. And because he's the longer guy and he's faster than Lobov, if he backpedals the entire time and just kicks and moves, kicks and moves, kicks and moves, and just plays Matador to Lobov moving forward and eventually just tries to get some takedowns and out-grapple him, I think Bruce Leroy's got a shot. I want to take Bruce Leroy. My issue is that I'm taking pretty much every single favorite outside of Gruetzemacher, which is not a sexy underdog. I I can't just be taking these favors the whole way along.
Why? If you like them, you like them.
And I do like them, but how much can you like them? First of all, 8,500 on DK, no chance, no chance. When I look at that and I think, geez, $7,700 on Lobov, not that bad. It's that,
motherfucker.
yeah, it's that I try to envision all these fights, and like I said, both guys are path to victory. When I envision how Lobov wins, he backs him up, he lands those heavies, he hurts him, he's got a good chance of knocking him out, but just it favors on the judges' scorecards. One guy's moving forward the whole time and swinging and trying to fight, and the other guy's backpedaling. Path to victory for Caceres is exactly that, backpedal, but you got to land on him, get him desperate. Eventually, he's got his hands at his hot side, marching forward, swinging bombs. We've seen him do it many times before. It's easy to take a guy down when they're doing that. So I see the path for both guys, and the path that I think is more likely to happen would be Bruce Leroy gets the takedowns, mixes it in, uses his kick game, uses that range, and outpoints Lobov. The thing is, Lobov's the GOAT. If he touches you, he's going to kill you. I saw the very first thing I saw yesterday of Lobov and Khabib into it backstage. Do you know what the title of the article was?
Goat-bov?
No, it said Nurmagomedov suffers near-death experience. Don't fuck with Artem Lobov, okay? And maybe that's something that Bruce Leroy is going to have to find out the hard way. And my last point on it is Bruce Leroy, a guy that fought for a long time. He was on the Ultimate Fighter at 55, but he also fought a long time at 35. Now he's back up to 45. He's not all that big, and he's not all that strong. So I do think he can take Lobov down, but if he shoots a takedown and Lobov stays standing, and he's forced to strike with him, and he's forced to have a dirty fight, then it's going to be a lot tougher for him. But I got to lean with Bruce Leroy to get the job done, although I'm not expecting much because he's a fairly untrustworthy guy at this point, too.
Ashley Evans Smith, 8,800 on DraftKings. Beck Rawlings, 7,400. Minus 190, Evans Smith, plus 165, Rawlings. Pass!
I am in on this fight. Not
Really?
for DK, but I don't see how Ashley Evans Smith loses fight. Paul!
You were on Beck Rawlings last time out.
I know, but listen.
Now it just feels like it's like a recency bias. You hurt from the fact that she hurt you, and now you're just taking it out on her.
No, because
there are definite ways. You can't trust either one of these.
Yeah, see, it's not like I'm
straight up pass,
It's
man.
not like I'm just upset with Beck Rawlings for costing me in her last fight with Jessie Jez Rose Clark. I also had Ashley Evans Smith to beat Sarah Moras, and nope, submitted in the first round. Both of them have let me down. The thing is that they're both the exact same fighter. Only one of them's a natural 115 coming up to 125, and one of them's a 135 coming down to 125.
Sure.
Ashley Evans Smith she's not very technical, but she's strong. She relies on just that bullish nature of go in there, try to pin you up against the cage.
Don't get submitted. Oh, she gets submitted.
Yeah, but is Beck Rawlings going to submit her? How does Beck Rawlings a submission game?
Who the fuck knows with these two?
I don't know,
I can't trust either one of them.
I think the only success that Rawlings has ever had in the UFC is her using her strength and physicality.
She has one win against Lisa Ellis.
Yeah, who has lost all of her fights in the UFC and is now losing fights in Japan. Similar to her husband, Eddie Ellis, has a near 500 professional record. Shout out to Eddie Ellis. He's still the man in my books. But yeah, no, listen, it's a low level of competition if you're looking at who Beck Rawlings is winning. But if you look at the moments that she's had any type of success, the Paige Van Zandt fight in round 1, prior to her getting karate kicked in the face, is that she uses that strength and that physicality. Her boxing's okay. She wants to back you up. She wants to have some success against you. Against Jessie Jess Rose Clark, she loses the first 2 rounds. In the 3rd round, I thought she had a good 3rd round, tiring the bigger fighter out, moving her backwards, trying to out-bully her a little bit. The problem in the Rose Clark fight is, and we talked about this when we broke down that fight, is Rose Clark was coming down from 135, fighting a 115er at 125. She would be bigger. She would be stronger. She used that strength. She used that size, and she beat Beck Rawlings. Now she's taking on Ashley Evans Smith, and it's the same case. It's a bigger girl at 135 who's a way better wrestler. Ashley Evans Smith wrestled collegiately, whereas Beck Rawlings from Australia never wrestled at that level. And in the UFC, not a great wrestler, not a great grappler. Boxing's okay, but Ashley Evans Smith is a slightly better boxer. And I get what you're saying, dude. Total pass, I agree. Minus 190 is not even a good price. But I don't think Beck Rawlings is going to be able to take her down. I don't think Beck Rawlings is going to be able to stand with her. She's going to be the smaller fighter. I think she loses this. The thing is that the price tag on $8,800 for Evan Smith is ridiculous. Yeah. Like, what's she going to do to get that value back? How is she going to score 88 points?
Just bull forward, bunch of takedowns.
One takedown in the first, a takedown in the second, takedown in the third. That's 15 points right there. You're gonna have an additional maybe 25 points from significant strikes. Like I just don't.
I agree.
Best case scenario, I think she's looking at 70 points. So pass on DK, but I think Evan Smith's got to rebound here and get the victory in the straight up.
We got Devin Clark taking on Mike Rodriguez. Devin Clark, 8,400 on DraftKings, 7,800 for Rodriguez. Both guys minus 110 on the betting line. Who you got?
You know what? I've been flip-flopping back and forth with this fight. Mike Rodriguez is a guy that is 6'4", fighting at 205 pounds, sorry. He used to fight at 185 back in the day, but he's 6'4". The guy's massive.
Yeah.
He trains at Joe
Devin
Lauzon.
Clark should fight at 185
Yeah,
pounds.
and Devin Clark is a guy that fought the one time against Alex Nicholson at 185, and then was like, yeah, this is not for me. Fights at 205. He's 6 feet tall, right?
Yeah.
He's got a 75-inch reach. Rodriguez has got an 83-inch reach. That's an 8-inch reach advantage. And the thing we've seen with Devin Clark is that his chin's not great. Nicholson completely floors
that chin
him.
is a big issue for him.
It's an issue for him because Jan Blachowicz hurt him to the body, but also hurt him, got his attention, and then choked him out with basically a bulldog, modified bulldog choke. And outside of that, his victories over guys that are just not big power punchers. We know that he comes from a wrestling background. He was a high school state wrestling champion. He was a collegiate junior college national champion. So the guy can wrestle. But the fact that he's 6 foot and he's not a big 205er, he's going to struggle to take down these big guys. And the thing with Rodriguez is he's a big guy, 6'4". He also trains with Joe Lauzon, who's on this card. They put their camp together. He's also with other guys at Calvin Kattar and Kyle Bochniak. They're all from Boston.
Rob Font.
Rob Font's not on the card, but you're right. They're all from that area.
He's there.
And
there's this other like
they're working together.
Embedded type video from
a
different company that I don't know what the name of them are, but Font's there with them.
Well, that just goes to show that it's a good camp. But what I'm saying is that you're peaking with other athletes on the same card that, you know, you've put in a good training camp. He's had a year off since his Dana White Contender Series fight where he knocks the guy out with a flying knee. Yep. That Mike Jones guy, by the way, that he knocks out on the show was a pretty good wrestler. He waited for it. He hit him.
Jamel Jones.
Yeah, Jamel Jones, sorry. He uses that range, and as soon as he sees the opportunity to sling forward with the knee, he does. Most of his victories have come by first-round finish, and that leads me to believe that if Devin Clark just grinds him a little bit and takes him into that second and third round, this big man very may well tire. And if he does tire and he gets taken down, then it should be Devin Clark's. And like I said, I'm floating from side to side. I thought Rodriguez, because of the size, fighting a guy that's a natural middleweight, a guy that really can't take a punch all that good, fighting with guys on the card, you know what? Rodriguez is a guy that's got a shot. But the flip side to that is, if you were going to fight southpaw 6'4" Mike Rodriguez, who's the best guy that you could bring in as a training partner? John Jones. And that's exactly who Devin Clark's done this camp with. Jones looks at the tape on Rodriguez. He mimics him. He's a southpaw. He's also 6'4". He also likes to do that front push kick. He could definitely mimic a guy like Rodriguez. And so Devin Clark has worked with that all camp long. So if you're training with a guy like Jones, who's mimicking your opponent, and you can't go out there and you can't do anything, which I've listened to interviews with him, and Devin Clark, when they talk about, like, how do you see this fight going, he's like, me on top pounding. He knows he doesn't want to stand with this guy. He knows he needs to take this guy down, and I hope he gets back to his roots, and I hope he uses his wrestling, but he's untrustworthy. I can't bet on his chin. I don't think he gets the job done. The 8,400 in Devin Clark, not worth it to me. The minus 110, I am tempted by it, but at the same time, this is a 50-50 fight, dude. Like,
and Rodriguez,
him getting knocked out
on DraftKings is the play.
Yeah, man, because he can knock this guy.
You're getting a 50-50 for a 78. So
a 50-50, and the potential is not 50-50. He might be able to grind out a boring decision. It's like 50-50. He could win, and if he does, it could be something spectacular.
And it's against a guy who's showed that he's super chinny in the past.
He's got an 8-inch reach advantage on him. Like, if that doesn't
Rodriguez
sound tempting,
is the play on
know.
DraftKings, especially GPPs.
No, sure. I hear you, dude. I hear you.
And finally, we got Zabit Magomedsharipov taking on Kyle Bochniak. Zabit is the most expensive guy on the card, 9,500. Bochniak is 6,700. Minus 800 for Zabit Magomedsharipov. Plus 550 Bochniak. This is, I think I said it as soon as this fight got booked. Like, this is the most lopsided booking since Shevchenko versus Caceres that I've seen. Like, I don't give Bochniak much of a chance here. Showcase fight for Zabit, who is just a total stud all the way around. Every fight that we see in the cage, we just he shows us another wrinkle of his game. This guy's elite. I think he's going to style on him, whether it's on the feet or if he takes it to the mat, he'll style on the ground as well. Nothing against Bochniak. He's a tough guy. He's kind of scraped by in a bunch of decisions and stuff, but I think this is the easiest fight that Zabit's had in the UFC so far. I think his first fight, I forget the guy he took on.
Mike Santiago.
Mike Santiago. I think he's better than Bochniak. And his last fight.
That's comparable.
Right,
that's close.
sure,
But Shaman Moraes.
Shaman Moraes is a much better fighter than Kyle Bochniak.
Yeah, no,
Shaman Moraes would beat Kyle Bochniak. and it's a step down. Nobody wants to take on this killer, and for good reason. He's a total stud. I can't really tell anybody to fade him at your own risk on DraftKings. Minus 800, like it's tough to play that. I think it should be like minus 2,000. I literally think it's very similar to like the Valentina Shevchenko versus Cachoeira, because like it was like, oh, she's minus 1,000. It's just like that should have been minus 3,000. There was no chance that Cachoeira was going to catch or beat Shevchenko in that fight. I feel similarly about this. I think Zabit Styles, easy win for a real up-and-coming prospect at 145 pounds.
Yeah, I agree. Zabit is to me what Khabib is to you. He's that young Russian guy who just looks unbelievably gangster. And it's like, I'm going to put my hat on this guy right now and be like, he'll win a world title within the next couple of years. Because that's how sold I am on Magomedsharipov. Magomedsharipov hit my radar a couple of years ago because a friend of mine, Sam Zakula, who's BJJ black belt under Mark Lehman. Guy is one of the most brilliant people I've ever talked to in jiu-jitsu, MMA. A very, very, very intellectually smart guy. Big on Sam Zakula. He loves these Russian fighters. He'll point out these guys all the time that this guy could win the UFC title right now. This guy can't get a visa right now, but I bet you he would totally, if he was to fight Frank Yeager, he would take him out tomorrow. He also knows this guy's actually 45 years old, not 35 years old. Like he's in on it. He says years ago, he says this Magomedsharipov guy's 6'1" at 145 pounds. He is going to be a
stylistical match.
Yeah, plus he's like
nightmare. You can't find guys that.
How you practice for that, man? Yeah. The other thing too is he comes from like a Sanda background, and like he went to university, and it was the Russian University of Fighting, where your classes involve fighting, and that's all he's done. He's very, very hard to take down. He's good on the ground. He's got a nasty submission game. Those Darce chokes for days because he's so long-ass arms. You can just set them up on you. Standing, he's like what Anthony Pettis should have evolved to. He's running off the cage. He's doing spin and shit. This guy's super exciting.
He's the future.
But he's the future, and that fact that he's so, like, I'm big on tall, lanky fighters like Max Holloway, like Brian Ortega, like John Jones. Like, that's the mold that you're a good grappler, you're a good striker, you're super long. You have that X factor. Those are the guys that eventually, they have the body type to dominate. Yes, that short, stocky power wrestler like a Khabib, like, a John Fitch, like, back in the day, Mark Coleman. There's always going to be a place for those guys because they're so strong they can take you down. But for my money's worth, it's those long, rangy athletes. And that's what Magomedsharipov's got, dude. He's super long. He's super rangy. He's good with his hands. He's awesome with his kicks. And Kyle Bochniak is basically one of those guys that's just tough. He stands in right in front of you.
Good on him for taking this fight. Nobody wants to take this fight. Guys higher in the rankings do not want to take this fight.
No, because they know wants to fight this
They know that like the general public looks and there's like, I don't even know how to pronounce this guy's name. That guy, you can't pronounce his name, he's gonna kick your ass.
Yeah, dude.
He's gonna embarrass you, and I think he's already 100% in the top 5 of this division. He just gotta get the fights.
Yeah. I think skill-wise that he can hang with all these guys, and he's only going to be getting better now that he's fighting better levels of competition. But the UFC realizes they got something special. There's a reason the UFC doesn't bring in 10 Russian guys that are all killers, because unfortunately, let's say these guys all win titles from you, they're hard to market. Khabib's got that undefeated 25-0 Russian bear thing going for him. But can all of these guys have that Russian bear thing going for them? Ivan Drago thing going for them? You can't. Guys like Volkov, he's promoted as Drago. Guys like Khabib, he's, the Russian bear 25-0. Magomedsharipov's like, well, how do you market this guy? Dude, he markets himself because he flies off the cage and is super entertaining. You can market those guys. UFC realizes we got something special. Mike Santiago, that's a layup. Show us what you can do, kid. Damn. That was a performance of the night bonus. Here you go. Shayman Moraes, this guy's supremely underrated. This guy's a guy, a former World Series of Fighting title challenger, super tough guy. He comes over. Magomedsharipov dices him up too. Yep. Fun fight, tough guy, and he does exactly what he's supposed to do. Now he's taking a step down in competition against Bochniak. I love him. The only one buyer beware thing I've got to say is, looking back at that last card, I loved Dawadu, and I loved Ankalaev, and I really did like
Ankalaev
Stevie Ray.
Won. That was actually the definition of fluke.
You know what, man?
Dawadu got his ass beat.
Dawadu got dropped and submitted, so
yeah.
I egg on my face on that one.
It is what it is.
And Stevie Ray, it's like, I would have loved if they would have scored Stevie Ray, but I honestly had Cajun Johnson winning 2-1. Stevie Ray did nothing those first 2 rounds. It was very frustrating to watch. But that Ankalaev fight, dude, it's like, it was St. Patrick's Day, and this Scottish motherfucker went full Braveheart on him and was basically like...
He was about to get 30-26 in literally the last half
30-26. He's getting smashed, and I think he's thinking to himself, in Scottish, You can take my brain cells, but you'll never take my win bonus. Bam, bam. Triangle. 1 second. He tapped. He tapped, Paul.
Yeah.
He tapped.
Final.
So unbelievably frustrating. Now, the thing with Magomedsharipov is, ain't no way Kyle Bochniak's triangling nobody. So I'm safe with it. And yeah, it was a killer. But let's rebound with this card.
Ronda Rousey and Kurt Angle versus Triple H and Stephanie McMahon. Who you got?
Yeah, I got a beef with Ronda Rousey. First of all,
She's been real whiny and stuff, but she's always been like that.
she's always been super whiny, but I don't know why people like her. Like, when she
Nobody
was,
does anymore.
well, she's so popular though.
Yeah.
Maybe she's playing a good heel. If people are interested
she's
in
not.
seeing her, no, she's
Like, all
terrible.
that stuff she did on ESPN, it's just like people were like, "Oh, I'm surprised that she's never taken." Like she would shut out the media, like in between her loss to Holly Holm and her loss to Nunez.
She refused
She
to do
refused
any-
to do
yeah,
any
she
media.
refused to
She
do any
didn't do
media.
any of the press conferences and stuff. Like she's a little sourpuss, and nobody likes her. I'm surprised. They should actually be. I'm not the biggest wrestling guy, but like they should be selling her as a heel, 100%. It's much easier because you know what's gonna happen with wrestling fans. They're gonna start saying like, you know, hey Ronda, Holly kicked your ass. Like that shit's gonna happen in the
course.
in the
She won't be
arenas
able
and
to
stuff,
take
and she
it.
can't take it. She's
way.
got no spine.
They'll be holding up those signs in the crowd where like Ronda's doing that fucked
I hope
up
she
face she's
loses
doing
to
where she
Triple
gets
H
kicked.
and Steph.
I'll
Like,
tell
that's
you-
what I'm
I'll tell you
hoping
my
for.
beef.
You know that she's gonna win.
I'm gonna explain to you my beef with the Ronda Rousey, right?
Okay.
Bear with me on this. And
Yeah.
I'm not the biggest wrestling fan either, but bear with me on this, okay? The fact that she's super, super sour, like we just talked about, so sour, can't talk about the loss. I'm gonna let that one pass. That's not the reason that I dislike strongly. I'm gonna say hate Ronda Rousey. The fact that she's the worst interview in the history planet on the mic, when she's in wrestling, when she's like, I'm coming for you. It's, oh my God. It's like, have you never learned?
Pointing at the sign.
Yeah, just that stink face all the time. And like, right? Just her, it's so bad. But you know what, Paul? It's not the reason I hate her. So stiff as a worker in the ring. Like, she's slamming these girls, and I feel bad for them because she's got very little technique, is not a pro wrestler.
I haven't even seen it.
Pro wrestling, well, I watched the clips
She
on
should
it.
be able to do like her hip toss. Like that should be pretty organic.
Yeah, but
Like
wrestling
she should
is
be. Like she's a judo Olympian.
fair.
She should be
fair.
able to get like they should just do her regular moves rather than her professional wrestling.
Yeah,
She just does that judo toss. She could do that to
Still, though,
anybody.
No, you can't just say, well, I was a judo, I'm just going to come in here and do judo toss on people. Like, it's a different thing altogether for professional wrestling.
Sure.
Just because you're a great Kurt Angle, now, mind you, he was a great amateur wrestler and a great professional wrestler. Very technical. But, like, guys like Dean Malenko and, you know, these guys, Lance Storm, Bret the Hitman Hart, terrible on the mic, but so technically sound. And the guys that were terrible, Brock Lesnar, the guys that have no technique but are good on the mic and you can sell them, but in her case, she's terrible on the mic, Paul, and she's a terrible wrestler.
You got to be good at one.
But that's not the reason I hate her.
Ideal if you're good at both.
The
but
other
you gotta be good
night,
at one.
the other night, I watched the clip on it. Stephanie McMahon puts Ronda Rousey through a table, and that bitch no-sells it. You're supposed to go out. You're supposed to go out when you go through a table. You lie there like, Instead, she's like, it's like, no, you can't know. You know what happened to Steve-O when Steve-O no-sold?
Yeah.
He got a concussion as a result, okay?
Yeah.
Against Umaga. She no-sells going through a table. That, to me, is dead to me.
Fire-worthy.
It is
Fire
fire-worthy.
her.
It is
She
fire.
should be banned.
Also, she's stealing Rowdy Roddy Piper's gimmick,
the whole-
wearing the shirt, wearing the leather jacket, having the same font on her intro. Yet Roddy Piper was fucking awesome on the mic, dude. He's like the god on the mic. She has no comparisons to him whatsoever. It's bullshit. And so I stopped watching pro wrestling in 2001. I think I was like 11 years old at the time, and I was like,
I'll be tuning into I tune into
you
wrestling.
watch the big ones. I watch the Royal Rumble.
I watch Royal Rumble.
I watch
I'll
the
watch
Rumble.
WrestleMania, and then
I watch
like
the Rumble.
maybe I'll stop by for like Survivor Series or.
I only used to watch
something
the
in the
Rumble,
summer,
the
you know what I
Rumble
mean?
and King of the Ring, because King of the Ring was my shit, especially when Badass Billy Gunn won. I think '99, fucking awesome. However, they don't do the King of the Ring anymore, so I only watch the Rumble. And yeah, as far as Ronda Rousey goes, dead to me, dead to me, Paul.
All right, well that just more or less wraps it up. Really good card, top to bottom, lots of entertaining fights. So I'm looking forward to UFC 223. But yeah, as I was saying, that wraps it up for us. Hope you enjoyed the show. Want to thank Pat Mayo doing all the sweet cuts from behind the board there. Want to thank Cody Saftic for breaking down the fights inside of all of this with me, as always. For both of those guys, I'm Paul Shaughnessy saying goodbye and good luck.
Mayo experience! Experience!